Okay, I wanted to start off today I wanted to show you guys this book. If anybody here has any interest in the geography data types and what you can do within SQL Server, or actually all these guys now support these geography data types, and Alpha does an unbelievable job with this. Read this book. This is an excellent, excellent overview. I read this book a couple of years ago, and I went into Kurt's office one day and said, Kurt, we have to support these geography data types. Mobile insists upon, being able to, work with geography, and it's just a key component of mobile. And this was the book that just, sort of lit my fire on that, and it is really, really good. So if you have any, curiosity about, well, how can I use geography data types, and how do I build spatial indexes, and how do I do geofencing, and how do I do all this stuff, this is the book that'll just tell you. And, Kurt devoured this thing and ultimately, abstracted all this stuff, and it's all in Alpha, and I'm not sure how many people actually know it's even in there, but it's amazing. And I encourage you, if you have any interest in geo stuff, that this book is just phenomenal. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at a really interesting application. So this is the World Cup app that I wrote. Let me see if we can get this thing up and running here so we can see it. And there we go. Okay, a little better luck here today. So this is a PhoneGap app that I wrote, and I walked into Richard's office one day and said, "Hey, Richard, how long does this World Cup thing go on for?" I didn't really know too much about it, and he's like, "Oh, it goes on for like a month and a half or something like that, or 2 months or something." So I said, "Oh, well, I think I could write a pretty cool app. Wouldn't it be neat if we could, tie into an API and pull up the results and sort of build this whole app that would be." Something really useful. I actually looked at a whole bunch of native stuff, native apps and everything that were really horrible. And I said, well, let me see what I can do. So this app really went from idea to app in 3 days. I had to clean some stuff up later on to make it a little prettier here and there, but I had the thing fully running in a period of 3 days. And we're going to go into how I built this thing. We are going to get into some of the more advanced JavaScript stuff. I think you guys can digest that and probably learn something from it. All of this code also is going to be available to you, so you can look at it and really study what's going on. So here we're not using an Alpha server at all. We're talking to APIs. So we're making API calls to this place called Kimono Labs. Has what's called the unofficial API. I actually found the official API, but it wasn't public, so it was kind of cool because I was into FIFA's stuff, but I couldn't legally use it, so I didn't. So we use this, and so this ties into. So this particular application ties into the unofficial Kimono Labs World Cup API. It also uses Flickr. So if we go out and we look for photos that mention a player, now. Keep in mind as I demo this that I have no control over the images that come up when I submit a user's name. So, you never really know what you're going to get. These are just Flickr images. And there's a lot of really interesting techniques in here. You'll see how to consume JSON data into a list control and how to format it, and just a lot of just cool stuff in here. And it was really, really fun to write this. So when we start it, it goes out to the Kimono Labs API, gets a list of all the teams. Then when you tap on a row, it's a little slow because of the internet here. And for some reason, I didn't get match results. So I must have had some sort of a timeout that occurred there. Let's see again. But I don't see them there. There's multiple callbacks that go on. There's another list underneath. But we'll try that on the desktop. It might be better. So now I'm going to go to my players. So now I'm doing another callback. Now I get a list of all the players on that team, and I can pick, one of these guys here. And notice, so I've got a panel navigator here, and I've got, here I can see a scroller down below. This has got all the player stats in it. If there were images for this particular player, another button would have appeared and said, and we would have pulled in some Flickr images. Let's see. These guys don't seem to be too. Columbia. So let's go to Germany, because let's face it, they won the thing, right? So let's see what we got here for players. And so let's pick this guy, and we can see we have 20 images from Flickr, and we'll go ahead and bring some images in, and then. Now, I used a jQuery plugin here because it was really fast for me to do this. So it's just it's called the Cycle plugin. It just cycles through these images, and I'll show you that. I also thought it was a good way to show you, jQuery integration. There's a lot going on in this app, and then the other thing I did was, well, if you don't know where a country is, so let's pick a country that none of us know. Like, where is this country, right? So if you could show on the map, and it will show you, okay, there it is. So, okay, now I can relate to where these guys are from. And so there's just a lot of cool stuff going on here. You can see the performance is good. I mean, even on the slow internet, you put it on a fast, like a 4G network or a fast network, and it's really, really great. So anyway, let's take a look at how this thing was built. Oh, the About screen. Another, similar to the way I did the help in the other one, it's all HTML. And, if you tap on that, we bring up the in-app browser again. I'm going to just bring it on down. The other thing I did here was kind of cool. There's a send feedback email. So if you tap on that, it just launches the native mail application, fills out the form, and sends it off to Richard. So you can put it whatever you want. So that was kind of cool. Okay, so let's take a look at this thing. This code is all available. Let's go take a look at where it is. My alpha is loaded right there. The PhoneGap, so go into wherever your executable is, the PhoneGap folder, examples. Oops, what happened there? Sorry. Examples, folder 3. I think that's it. The one that's in there might need a little tweaking, but it's close to what I'm going to show you today. I was looking at this code, and I'm not quite sure that that's the latest rev of the code, but you can look at it. It's there. Everything's there for you to build this application. I did build it as a PhoneGap application because I wanted a native app. I wanted a native wrapper. I used some of PhoneGap's functionality, but I'm actually going to show it to you today. We'll show it in live preview, because I just put enough JavaScript in there to sense, well, what plugins do I have, and I fire them off if I have them. If I don't have them, I just use like JavaScript alerts or something like that. So if you look at the information panel here, I try to document everything about it. This uses jQuery core. It doesn't use jQuery UI. So you go into your project properties, set that up the way you should. You do need to get an API key. And you shouldn't have any trouble doing that. Go to kimonolobs.com/worldcup/docs, and you'll see all that. And then this uses the notification, the in-app browser, and the status bar plugin. And it was also designed to be run in portrait mode only. And that's a setting in the PhoneGap app builder. So you can just select that, and that's about all you need to do. And like I said here, I chose to use jQuery and the Cycle plugin to display and cycle the player images acquired from Flickr. And that's the only place that I use jQuery in this component. All right, so let's dig into this and just take a look at the way it was laid out. So you'll see multiple panel navigators in this app. And so we'll see our first panel card is going to bring up this list of teams, okay? So let's take a look. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an XHR2 callback. So we're doing so we're calling this Kimono Labs API, and we're doing right through JavaScript just an XHR2 call, and I'll show you the code to do that. And it's going to just send back JSON. So when I'm going to send stuff out, this is very typical of any RESTful API. I just make my request and it sends back JSON. I mean, this is done all over the web. So it's important that you guys know how to do this stuff. Well, our list control makes this unbelievably easy to do. So if you know you're getting back a flat JSON file, right? So you can say, okay, well, and I knew that because I looked at the test pages that they had on Kimono Labs. So let's go look at that quickly. So Kimono Labs World Cup doc there, perfect. So, come on. Okay, so this is where I found this, and you know, you could, and they have this really cool live data explorer, which was really neat because you could just kind of type in whatever request you wanted, and it would show me the JSON that comes back. So I could just look at this and see, oh, you know, it's just a flat, you know, JSON object. There's no embedded objects or anything else. So I could actually, you know, look at what was going to come back when I made the call, and that made life, I think, pretty easy. So let's look at, so if we're just going to get just a flat JSON structure back, well, in the list control, you can define, say, oh, well, we're going to have static data. And then you can just say, so here I've defined all of the fields that I need. So this is all of the, when we looked at that JSON, you know, this is essentially the property that's going to be returned. So team ID, name, logo, website, founded year. That's the whole structure that comes back to me, right? So I define that right there. This is one technique of doing this, and I'm going to go ahead and show you another, okay? And then, so at the return field here is going to be the team ID. So that means when you click on that row, we're going to get the team ID. That's what we're going to be working with. So let's go take a look at, before we drill into anything, well, so how do I actually populate that list? So let's go into our JavaScript functions, and this may be a little bit easier for you guys to see. I don't know. Is that easier, or? This is the, okay, I won't use it. So the problem with this one is I can't get this whole window to fit. So here, let's see if we can make this bigger. And that's pretty good. Okay. So this uses a, you know, I showed you the technique I use all the time here. And you'll see there are my app globals. Generate the, you know, AppVars object. I start setting up my stuff, you know, my key, my timeouts. These are globals that I need, you know, photo count and so on. So, and then we can take a look at all these functions, but let's look at the first one being, let's see, get World Cup teams. That's going to be pretty much the first thing we're going to fire off. So here I'm just checking to make sure that the key, you've put something in the key field. So in the component that you guys can get, the public component, it just says enter your API key here. That's up top. And so if you don't, it will just not work. But, and this was kind of cool. So what I did here was I set up a function label, get teams. I was thinking, gee, in JavaScript, you should be able to get the name of the function, right? But it turns out I couldn't figure out a way to do that. So to say, well, what function am I really in? And so I just hand-coded it. So I generate this variable called this function label. And I do that because if there's an error, I want to report back, oh, this is the method that failed, you know, so I got some idea of what's going on. So you'll notice in my timeout, this XHR timeout right here, the error alert is a function that I wrote that you pass in this function label. So now I know, you know, what failed. Then this is something else that rather than, here I create an object, sorry, this is just to show the wait message that comes up. So here we're just using the show wait message method of the dialog object there. And then I pass in the lookup URL, and in this case, I'm going to pass in, I have to pass in my, my key. So that's the thing I need. And then I can pass in something else I want to sort on wins. So now here I'm generating an XHR object. Now if you've never done that and you want to learn about this stuff, this is the place to go. So it's called HTML5 Rocks. And they have the best stuff in the world on HTML5. And their little tutorials, their blog articles and stuff are written really, really well. You'll see in my code that it looks a lot like this, you know. So if you want to dig into, you know, what you can do with these, and it's really quite simple once you get used to it, you know, with using some of the cool features that are in HTML5, this is the place to go. I've learned so much from this particular site, so I highly recommend that. So I'm using that here, and you know, we're going to create our own XML HTTP requests. We're going to do a GET request. We're going to set a timeout, 5,000 milliseconds, and then we start putting in, you know, so what happens when a timeout occurs? So here's our on timeout handler. Our on load handler is what happens when good things happen, and then this xhr.send sort of starts it all off. You know, that's what initiates everything. And these are callbacks that will fire based on something happening. So when we look at the onload event, so here I'm defining an inline function, and so we get the data comes back as this dot response, and then I just set that as a variable. I do a JSON parse on it, get the underbar data. And then I take a look at it and see if there is any error in there anywhere, and because that's what would happen if I passed in like an invalid API key or something like that. It would. This is the error where I could catch the error. But assuming everything goes well, and I have what looks like a nice JSON list, you know, I bring that back. I identify the object. That's my teams list, so I say get control. I use the get control method, and then I populate it with the data. So we'll take a look at the template that I use to do that, and then I hide the wait message, and I'm at the point where I'm displaying the list of teams. So just to we'll just run through it real quick here. We're just going to show you that functionality, and that will work in live preview here. Come on. There's our wait, and there's our results. So that's what happened in that. The code that we just took a look at. Yeah.
How are you getting the logos back? Is it a URL that you're being passed back that then loads the logo, or are you actually getting...
I think those are base64 images that are coming back there. That's very typical. We can look at that when we look at the template. So let's go back into the controls for teams, list properties. Let's look at the, so fields, you know, here's all my fields that I defined, right? So, and then we've got a detail view I'm using, and that's when you tap on the row, and we're going to go ahead and then bring up the that team's information. We do a field map on the detail view, and this is our layout here. So these are the placeholders, you can see, like logo. Image source is logo. Yeah, that is base64, I think, that comes back, and so you can kind of see the way the template was built here. Again, you guys have access to all this code, so you can study it and play with it and do whatever you'd like. Oh, I'll show you that. So that's a good question. So we look at our client-side events, one place, on initialize complete. I use this all the time. So you notice the first line, I populate my div with, I'm calling load app help. That's a function to populate the help div that's in the, when you tap on the help, it'll bring that panel card over. And then there's my get World Cup teams function that I'm calling there. That does all the work. So let's go take a look at how we handle that, the help. So the help is in one of these panel cards down here, right here. So here you'll see my freeform container. You'll see in the container there's nothing. There's a div called app help. I'm assigning a class to it that I've defined. So you'll notice all my buttons and backgrounds and all that. I set up my own styling for that. And then look at the JavaScript functions here. So that was the load help. And here we are. This is the same technique I showed you guys yesterday. So I just define the I define the HTML right here, and that's what we use to populate the div. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. Let's go back here, and so we've got our list now, and it is displaying. So what happens when you click on a row? Remember, we're going to return that team ID, and we've got a detailed view defined. Now, what I did here, this is kind of a neat little trick, and again, there's multiple ways of doing this. It's just the way I chose to do it at the time. And remember, I was stressed out for time here. I had to get this thing done fast. So what I did was I brought these different fields and I used them as just hidden fields. And then I dropped in a freeform container, and so I sort of made my own template there of that's the way I wanted the results to appear, so wins, losses, and so on. And then match results is here, but that's actually in another list. So panel card 2, or let's see, this team details card, this panel card it's a panel layout. So we've got a panel card here, and we've got another panel card, and this is the one that has the matches in it. Now matches was kind of tricky because the way the API was tracking matches was wins when you were a home team and wins when you were an away team. I didn't quite understand that because they're sort of all played in the same area, I think, right? So, but that's the way it was done. So that meant for me to get the results for any given team, I had to get both when they were a home team and when they were an away team, or listed as an away team. So there's multiple callbacks that have to be done to get the matches. So how did we do that? Well, it turns out in this case now I had a little bit more complex JSON coming back because I had embedded objects. So what I did was I just defined the whole structure right here. So notice in static choices, I defined the whole structure that I knew I was going to get back, right? So you can see I've got there's my home object and my away object and all the properties associated with that. So it's not a flat list in this case. It was, as we had on our first list, was just flat properties. Well, now we're getting properties and objects. In Belgium, we're going to go to our players. So now we see our list of players. We'll click on this guy here. And you notice it took a little bit there because there's a lot going on. You got we got all those Flickr photos, and so we made the count and so on, and we've got all of his stats down here. So here you can see, this is a panel navigator with a panel up above, and here's a scroll panel down below, and that's what's supposed to happen on the matches side. And then we see the photos button with this count of 13. So when we click on it, then because we have more than one image, we get the previous and next, although previous really shouldn't be here for number 1. And then you can see it kind of fades in and out. And it fills the container the way we'd like. And if we were running on a tablet, it would be a higher res image than it is on a phone. It's all these little things that are really, really important. This is the real polish, that makes a really nice app. And I think people really appreciate this stuff. So that's how we did that. Let me see if there's anything else of incredible interest in here, and then we'll open this up. So, okay, so when we click on players, we saw what happened. We transitioned this panel card into view with stats. So let's look at player details, another freeform container. Let's see what I've got in here. Again, this really, all this is really a template, right? So I just sort of defined my own template in that freeform area. Where and notice I've got the hidden fields again. So I've hidden all these fields, and the freeform container is where we just do the whole layout. And then on the button, so this is the photos button. Oh, I had to do some funky things here, yeah, to get that the counter bubble. I had to do some funny things with that. So I did that here. This is the CSS, and it's just, I did it in line. So I set up the button, I set up an icon class, I got a count class, and I just fiddled with this to make it look the way I wanted it to, right? Yeah, you know. So, I mean, that's one of the nice things about Alpha is you can just go in there and start fiddling around with stuff and then look at it and say, oh, that looks about right, you know, and so it's simple enough to do. And then let's go look at, okay, so we've got, oh, so when you click on that, let's go look at the click event. All we do is bring that panel into view because we've already populated it. So, because remember when you clicked on that the player, we've already got all the data. I've already populated the panel. I just didn't transition it into view. So that's all I have to do when you go ahead and click on that button. So that's going to be in player images. That's this panel card right here. And again, let's take a look at what we got here. So let's see how I did this. There's a panel header. Oh, here's our freeform container. And again, yeah, I just you know defined some real an ID, and I'm doing a replacement in that ID. I believe, yeah, with the cycle plugin. That's how I'm doing it. Yep. So that's that, and then the panel footer should have. I think I put the buttons in here. Yeah. So here we'll take a look at. These are the buttons. And in the cycle plugin, I wired these buttons into work with the jQuery cycle plugin. That's how I did that. And again, you know, you can see the button class. I defined my own CSS there. Let's just see. I think I did that in the properties here. Local CSS definitions. So here, this is where I just set up my classes for my buttons. You know, I have a hover state, active state. So, and what I did was I used a like a button generator, and it's in the documentation. I think it came from like Weebly or one of those. There's a whole bunch of these out there. You can make these buttons. They look great, and you can just steal the CSS and then plop it in here, and you're good to go. And then you can adjust it as you want. And then I set up, you know, different classes for the blue panel header, blue panel footer, blue panel body, and it was just a simple, easy way of doing that. So, you know, I think what you're seeing is, you know, just how incredibly versatile this tool really is. If you have the skills and you have the imagination, you know, you're not just locked into doing what you might think you can do with a UX or a grid or with anything else. You can build just amazing apps, you know, that are consuming data from anywhere on the web. And you know, and I could still use a UX that's using that's calling back to an alpha server, and maybe that's driving a request to another, you know, external API. It's just amazing to me how versatile this tool really is. And as we move forward, you know, more and more we see like, okay, so now we're going to have, you know, JavaScript on the server side, or XBasic, or if you want to jump into .NET, you can. It's just, I think it's incredibly versatile. I don't think there's any other platform out there that allows the versatility that we have with Alpha. And I think once you get to know this stuff, you know, it's just, it's fun. I mean, building these apps is fun. This was a fun app to build. I enjoyed doing it. I learned a lot from it. And I think, you know, I think you have to do that. You got to challenge yourself. You got to say, well, you know, do I think I can tackle this? And, you know, more often than not, you're going to be able to tackle it. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this. I think that's it for my time. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'd be happy to answer. Other than that,
The fallback URL that the PhoneGap app needs to be using is
dynamic.
the callback URL is not known at the time that you initially build the PhoneGap app, but is only known after the PhoneGap app is opened, and then you need to dynamically specify the callback URL for the PhoneGap app. Is that
That's it. That's as I understand it.
Is that the so basically, while I've never tried to do it myself, the fact of the matter is that the callback URL is just a property in the UX component. And so I don't see any reason why, after the PhoneGap app has been initialized, that you couldn't execute some JavaScript command that reset the value of the callback URL to point to the laptop on the local network in the office or the warehouse where you're working. So in theory, I think that should work. Of course, there's sometimes a gap between theory and practice. But
what you could do is you could have, like, you know, a list control that might have all of the, you know, URLs to the different servers, you know, and or you could even drive it through a, you know, that'd probably be the best way to do it, because you can't make a callback at all until you know where your server is.
I mean, I think the whole point, though, is that the basic concept here is that you're redefining the callback URL after the PhoneGap app has launched. And I just don't see any reason why that shouldn't be doable.
Right. I think it probably is. I think we can, if we can't do it right now, I think we can certainly make it happen. So. And your other question was? Oh, you didn't have, I thought you had two questions.
No, just one question.
Okay.
That's an important question because definitely 85%
Okay. Okay, well, thanks so much. Dave, oh,
Did you say this was available?
yeah. Go to your Alpha, your applications, wherever you've installed Alpha, go to the PhoneGap folder, go to examples, and this is under folder number 3. You have to have the latest build, yeah. And like I said, I'm not quite sure it's the exact component here. I just have to look at it. When I was running today, I noticed I had some timeout issues, and I'm not quite sure that they're addressed in the component that's there, but certainly the structure is very close to what you just saw. All right, thanks so much.